There comes a moment in an empath's life that doesn't look dramatic from the outside, but internally, it feels like a quiet revolution. No loud announcement, no final argument, no scene that signals the end of something, just a shift, a deep, undeniable shift. It's the moment an empath chooses peace over people. And if you've ever been there, or you're standing on the edge of it right now, you know this is not a decision that comes easily because for most of your life, you were wired differently. You were the one who understood, the one who stayed, the one who tried to make sense of what others couldn't even explain themselves. You were the emotional anchor, the listener, the fixer, the one who held space even when your own world felt like it was quietly unraveling. You didn't just care, you carried. You carried conversations long after they ended. You carried other people's pain as if it were your responsibility to soften it. You carried relationships that felt heavy, hoping that if you just gave a little more, understood a little deeper, stayed a little longer, something would change. And for a while, that belief kept you going. It gave you purpose. It gave you a sense of meaning. It made you feel like your empathy was not just a trait, but a role you were meant to fulfill. But over time, something begins to happen. That same empathy that once felt like a strength starts to feel exhausting, not because caring is wrong, but because caring without boundaries becomes self erasure. You start to notice the imbalance. You notice how often you are the one reaching out, checking in, chatting, holding things together. You notice how conversations revolve around others, while your own needs quietly take a back seat. You notice how your emotional energy is constantly being extended outward, with very little returning to you in a way that feels sustaining. And still, you stay. Because walking away doesn't align with who you believe yourself to be. You tell yourself, this is what it means to care. You tell yourself, it me. You tell yourself, and maybe it will get better. But beneath all of that, there is a quiet voice. A voice that doesn't shout, but persists. A voice that asks, what about you? And for a long time, that question may feel uncomfortable, even unfamiliar. Because when you've spent so much of your life prioritizing others, turning inward can feel like you're doing something wrong. But that voice doesn't disappear, it gets stronger. It starts to show up in moments of exhaustion, in moments where you feel drained after interactions that once felt meaningful. It shows up when you realize you're over explaining yourself to people who are not really listening. It shows up when you feel the weight of relationships that seem to require constant maintenance but offer very little stability. And slowly, that voice begins to shift your awareness. You start to see patterns you once overlooked. You begin to recognize that some connections are not built on mutual respect, but on emotional dependency. You realize that your empathy has been welcomed, but not always honored. And that realization is not easy because it forces you to confront something deeper. The possibility that what you thought was connection was sometimes attachment. The possibility that what you thought was love was sometimes imbalance. And the possibility that staying has cost you more than leaving ever would. This is where the moment begins to form. The moment you choose peace over people, not because you've stopped caring, but because you've started caring about yourself too. And that shift changes everything. Because choosing peace doesn't mean you suddenly become distant or unfeeling. It means you become discerning. You begin to recognize the difference between helping and overextending, between supporting and losing yourself, between connection and control. You start to understand that not every relationship deserves unlimited access to your energy, that not every person is capable of meeting you where you are, and that your role is not to fix, save, or carry others at the expense of your own well-being. But even with that understanding, the choice is not always easy. Because choosing peace often comes with discomfort. It means saying no when you're used to saying yes. It means stepping back when your instinct is to lean in. It means allowing distance in places where you once tried to create closeness. And that can feel like loss. It can feel like you're abandoning people, like you're letting them down, like you're becoming someone you never wanted to be. But here's the truth that begins to emerge in this process. You are not abandoning others. You are no longer abandoning yourself. And that distinction matters. Because for so long, your peace was negotiable. It was something you were willing to sacrifice to maintain connection, to avoid conflict, to keep things stable. But now, you are beginning to see that peace is not something you find by managing others. It is something you create by honoring yourself. And as you begin to live from that place, your emotional intelligence deepens, not in the way you understand others, but in the way you understand yourself. You become more aware of your limits, more attuned to your energy, more connected to what feels right and what doesn't, without needing external validation to confirm it. And that awareness becomes your guide. It helps you recognize when a conversation is draining rather than nourishing. It helps you see when someone is engaging with you authentically or when they are pulling you into a pattern that feels familiar but unhealthy. It helps you pause before reacting, giving you the space to choose how you respond rather than being pulled into automatic emotional responses. And that pause is powerful because it breaks the cycle. It creates a moment where you are no longer operating from habit, but from intention. And in that moment, you can choose differently. You can choose to disengage from conversations that feel circular or manipulative. You can choose not to explain yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You can choose to protect your energy instead of constantly offering it. And those choices begin to build something within you, a sense of inner power that is not dependent on others, a groundedness that comes from being aligned with your own truth, a clarity that allows you to move through life without constantly questioning your worth. And that inner power doesn't make you less compassionate. It makes your compassion more sustainable because now it is balanced. And now it includes you. Now it is rooted in self respect. And as you continue to choose peace, something else begins to shift. Your relationships begin to change, not always in the way you expect. Some connections may fade. Some people may not understand your boundaries. Some may even react negatively to your change because it disrupts the dynamic they were comfortable with. And that can be painful because even when a relationship is unhealthy, there is still familiarity there. There is still history. There is still a part of you that hoped it could be different. But choosing peace means accepting what is, not holding on to what could be. It means recognizing that not everyone will grow with you, that not everyone will meet you in this new space of clarity and self respect. And that's okay, because this journey is not about maintaining every connection. And it is about aligning with the right ones, the ones that respect your boundaries, the ones that value your presence without requiring you to overextend, the ones that meet you with the same level of care and awareness that you bring. And as you begin to experience those kinds of connections, your understanding of relationships transforms. You no longer equate intensity with depth. You no longer mistake inconsistency for complexity. You no longer feel the need to prove your worth through how much you give. Instead, you begin to value steadiness, mutuality, emotional safety, and those values become your foundation. They guide your choices. They shape your interactions. They reinforce your sense of self in a way that is no longer easily shaken by external dynamics. And through all of this, you begin to see something clearly. Choosing peace was never about losing people. It was about finding yourself, finding the version of you that exists outside of constant emotional labor, finding the part of you that doesn't need to earn connection through overgiving. So, finding the voice that was always there, but often quieted in the presence of louder demands. And as that voice becomes stronger, your life begins to reflect it in the boundaries you set, in the relationships you choose, in the way you show up, not just for others, but for yourself. And that is where